Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, "If the bankers march by land or sea tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arc of the North Church Tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and we shall defeat the bankers, you and me." Something like that was the ride of Paul Revere. I'm William Wagner. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, thank you. Here we are. Interesting things have happened. I get a call from Roger Tanner, who's in Ohio. Now, if you remember, Roger Tanner, I went out and interviewed him out in Ohio. Toledo, I think, was the city. He's a very interesting character. The FBI was trying to get him killed some years ago, according to Roger. And the police officer involved confirmed that to me. And we have that on tape, and you can find that on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. He's now telling me he's talked to the Secret Service office in Ohio and one in Los Angeles and a third one. And he's explaining to them how securities fraud is being committed regularly in mass. Now, if you were to take a $100 bill, take one out of your wallet, and you were to go over to a color copying machine and try to copy it, they have the machines set now so they won't. But some of the early color copy machines, you could actually take a $100 bill and you could Xerox it, both sides. And some people did that. That's called securities fraud. This is a note. This $100 bill is not really $100. This is a note, which is a security for $100 that the Federal Reserve Bank is supposed to have hidden somewhere in a vault at Fort Knox or at one of the Federal Reserve banks or the gold depository, which was destroyed on 9/11, 2001. So when they take your home mortgage after you've signed it, they take the original that you signed, the wet ink original that you physically touched, they scan it, they digitalize it. All the banks do this, at least all the banks that I know, B of A, Wells Fargo, all the biggies, and many of them that have already gone defunct, they all do this. Once they've digitalized it, they can spit out as many copies as they want, but if they make a copy that's more than 75% of the original, that's a felony, or so I am told by people in law enforcement who are familiar. Now, Roger Tanner calls me and he tells me he's got the Secret Service interested because your mortgage note is also a security. And when they make 8, 9, 10 copies of it and sell it to 8, 9, 10 different institutions, and those institutions then in turn go to what's called a federal discount window and cash it. So say your mortgage was $1 million. You think you're going to be paying for 30 years or until you refinance on that $1 million note. You think the bank somewhere in a file has got your note filed away and they're holding it for 30 years and checking off each month when you pay it. They're not. That almost never, ever happens. What they do is they run it through a scanner, digitalize it, then they shred the original. As soon as they shred that original note, they've destroyed the original. They have no right to come to you and say, make your next month's payment or we're going to foreclose and take your house away from you and throw you in the street. They don't have that right anymore. Valerie Lopez was on my show a couple of years ago trying to explain this. And she called it going through the California window, which California door. They were just digitalizing and electronically sending it to Wall Street in New York City. All the mortgages, pretty much all the mortgages. And she explained it that if you have the original note, you have a right to collect the payment stream. But they don't have the original note because they destroy it usually within 90 days after you sign it. The crime is they don't just cash in your original note. They make identical full-size copies, scan them, sell them to different institutions, and each institution then goes to the Federal Reserve discount window and cashes it. So you sign $1 million note, $10 million flood the market, goes into somebody's pockets. And you're wondering why everybody wants to be a securities broker in Wall Street? Because they become instant millionaires, and if they last 10 years, they're billionaires. All they got to do is buy these things up, go to the Federal Reserve note, sell them, and then they got a pile of cash. But when they take that pile of cash and they start to spend it, it devalues your working wages. This is also an unseen crime. Roger tells me he's got the Secret Service interested. I think it's a really good thing, because if they make copies of a $100 bill, that's securities fraud, because that $100 bill is a note. And someone is supposed to have $100 in gold or silver, which they did away with that back in 1971, and then they phased out the silver. So Roger calls me, and I thought this was a really interesting conversation. It's not very long. But if we get the Secret Service to go after these people, these bankers, it's going to make the pots and pans rebellion that we saw in Iceland look like nothing. Let's go and listen to Roger Tanner as he called me just yesterday, Thursday, from Ohio. I think we, the people, need to hear this and know this. Roger.
Supreme Court of Maine, Debbie Reagan, the court had ruled against her. She challenged the foreclosure on the grounds that they did not have standing. They did not possess the security instruments. And she saved all the money, hired an attorney. He presented it appropriately. And they ruled against her. 8 months later, without any notification, the Supreme Court reversed itself.
Wait a minute. I understood you to say she hired an attorney who presented the case in a competent manner.
Right.
And they ruled against her. When you say they, did you mean the lower court or the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court of what state?
Maine.
And we're talking about Debbie
Reagan was the name of this gal.
Debbie Reagan. Okay, you're talking about Debbie Reagan. So the same Supreme Court that ruled against her reversed
8 months later, reversed itself, said they had overlooked. They made a mistake in writing, and they stated that the bank did not have standing to bring the action in the beginning, period.
And what did they discover was their mistake?
Well, they didn't really go into detail, but what is the problem is these mortgages and deeds of trust are copies. They're not originals.
Yeah, it all goes back to they have to have the original wet ink paper that you actually signed.
Exactly.
What is Debbie Reagan's case number? When it got to the Supreme Court, what was it filed under?
I'll send you the whole thing tonight.
Okay.
You'll have it. But that's not the important thing. I took this information and I contacted the Secret Service in L.A. and talked with a security specialist who was very nice. And he admits they're not aware of the security counterfeit. Nobody's ever brought it to their attention. They usually deal with banknotes, in other words, counterfeit money. And he was very interested, and I walked him through, verbally, all the criteria of this scam that's been going on. And he said, if the court has a certified copy of the deed of trust or the mortgage, that's acceptable in the court. And I said, there's only one problem. If they turn in a certified copy, that means they have to have the original, or they can't make it certified. He says, you're absolutely right. He says, you're telling me that there's certified copies made, and they do not have the original? I says, absolute. He says, okay, next step is intent. He said, did they intend to get anything of value with that certified copy? I said, absolute, the property. He says, that's felony. That's felony. He says, he's got his homework. He's got to do his homework on it, but he took all my contact information, and he says he will be calling me, and he says, too bad you're not out here. He said he'd go a lot faster. But he said, this is systemic. Exactly what we both agree that. This is huge.
Yeah, I agree. What's this agent's first name? Don't give me his last name.
He is the security specialist there at the Los Angeles office, though.
At what address? They got several addresses.
I've got the address. The Secret Service I think only has, no, you're right, their field office.
All right. Well,
I've got the number.
Facebook it to me later. I'll see if I will ask and see if anybody in the office will validate and give me any info on what they're doing. But go ahead.
Well, the thing of it is, once this, as I told David, once this starts coming unglued, why he should be first in line. Now, there's one other thing. I have a form to fill out, to turn in to them for investigation that they sent me, a 3-page form. I'll send you that too. But I'll call you and let you know it's coming. The thing of it is, I wish I was out there in a way. If they could follow through on something like this absolute train wrecks everything. Now, David was to have a property sold on the 15th today. And with the information I understand that he got from me, and so when he went to the court, I told him to go down and do an emergency writ, extraordinary writ, to have the thing stopped because of this other case, and then they stopped his sale.
Yeah, he told me that. They just canceled the sale of his property.
Yeah,
which is just amazing in itself. It doesn't mean the bank has given up, but at least they recognize they have an issue that could cause them 10 times more damages if they didn't cancel the sale, so they're going to deal with the issue, which is good for David Fee, because he still keeps his property.
Well, I can make sure that they turn and run for the woods once they find this. They're going to be worried about, see, it's 20 years to use a counterfeit security to obtain something of value. It falls under Title 18, 493, 494, 495, and so on. And this is what they've done. And the guy from the Secret Service agreed with me 100%. He said, boy, he says, it's going to catch a lot of them, isn't it? I said, yeah. He says, oh my. See, he was of the opinion, well, you paid the money. I mean, you borrowed the money, you should have to pay it back. And I explained to him, well, that's true, except that in the National Banking Act 1933 stipulates that all this type of loans had to be insured. And I says the borrower is paying the insurance, and if it fails, it pays the lender after 180 days, it pays it off. And he says, well, then there's no claim. I says, yeah. But I said, then they sell it, and the FBI, I told him about the FBI, the 2010 FBI fraud report, and he was going to pull that up. I said, if you need it, I'll send it to you. He says, no, I'll get it from the FBI. He says, this is interesting stuff. And I said, they're admitting that this has been going on, but nobody seems to do anything about it. But I says, you guys are sitting in the crosshairs to go after these people because you have the currency control. I said, that's your specialty. He said, yes. And I said, okay. You got two types of securities. You've got the government security, and then you've got the Federal Deposit Insurance Security. I said, that's what this falls under. And I says, when they're using counterfeit to obtain value of anything, he says, that's 20 years. You're right, 20 years.
Is that a mandatory 20-year sentence?
Yep.
In Club Fed?
At Club Fed, yeah, that's right.
And there's no good time or reduction in Club Fed, is there?
No.
I like it. I like it, Roger. Well, this is good news. I hope that Secret Service agent doesn't drop the ball or get moved to a different location and reassigned.
We've got this door opened up in 3 locations. I got got it opened up here in Ohio, and Leon's got it opened up in Maine. But we're already opening the doors all the way around. I got a gal in Chicago that she's opening up. I got to talk to the guy there. His name's McDonald. I'm supposed to talk to him today. Yeah, I've got the door open.
Well, I thank you for this call, Roger. That's great.
My opinion is, if I'm wrong, somebody's going to have to stand up and tell me where. So far, that's not happened.